Hi, I'm Angela Fehr, and this is Angela Fehr Watercolor. Today we're going to look at a playful way to create value studies and make our paintings stronger. Remember that my channel is all about watercolor tutorials to build your skills and help you become your own favorite artist. Let's get started. We're doing something a little different for my channel today, and yet it's something that's not unusual for me. It's something that I do fairly often, and it's a really valuable lesson that you're going to want to hang on to. So let's just get started. We are prepping our supplies right now. I'm using my favorite Escoda Versatile number 10 rigger brush and indigo watercolor paint. This is indigo made by Daniel Smith. And it's going to be the only color we use, at least for this stage of the painting. And so the goal here is really thinking about the lights and darks in our reference photo and learning how to paint based on those values. When I do this, it makes my painting process so much stronger. It makes my paintings more powerful, and it helps me to really see beyond the colors and the shapes on my paper and the things on my paper and start to focus on the value, and that those contrasts made by value are what makes your painting more powerful. So, and I want to be bold and powerful here, so we are going to try to do this quite fast. And you see I'm using a paper that is quite large, actually, a 10 by 14 watercolor paper. Please don't think you need paper that large for this exercise. Usually I would be doing this postcard size or smaller, or maybe an 8 by or 9 by 12. But it is pretty big to do it on the 10 by 14. You just end up filling a lot of the page with color, one color. So right now I'm just looking for that darkest value, and I'm going to place that first. And I know a lot of times in watercolor we think about the lightest values first. We work light to dark. The problem with that can often be that if your lightest values start to get too dark, we really lose the ability to have those strong contrasts. So by placing my darkest values first, I'm hoping I can avoid that. We're going to place our darkest values, we're going to look for our middle values, and we're going to leave our whites, our lights, to be nice and white here on the paper. And I'm seeing there's like a dark shadow along the land, so I'm placing that there. There's a little bit of some fallen logs over here. We're just going to suggest those. There's a rock there. And if I squint at my paper, I can see the variations here in the darkest area. The trees all kind of touch the ground down here, and it's a little bit irregular because there's shrubs and bushes and sticks kind of poking up. So we have areas that are quite dark, and then we have kind of a broken line where the grasses come up in front of our dark trees. And I'm talking as I paint, and part of that is I'm telling myself what to do. And I know you're probably thinking I'm doing this for your benefit, but when I talk as I paint, I really get to start to see and plan. So it's very likely, and I don't even really know because when I'm painting I'm kind of in the zone, but it's very likely that when I'm painting, even without the video camera on, I'm talking to myself. Whatever helps me process the painting. So right now as I start to work, and I love choosing indigo because it creates beautiful watermarks. If you drip water onto the indigo, it really starts to move that color. So we've got some variation. We don't have just black looking values. It's kind of, there's some solidity and some softness as well. And we have this tendency that we often will paint our darkest values just solid, dead. There's no transparency there at all. And we don't usually want to do that with watercolor. It's so much more lively and interesting if you leave some transparency, a little bit of that glow of the white paper showing through. Remember too that I'm working, I haven't mixed any diluted color on my palette. I'm just working straight from the pan here, and one reason I'm doing that is because I can dilute the color as I go. So I can grab a little water on my brush, and that'll lighten those strokes as they go down on the paper. If I put a too dark stroke down, I wet it a bit, and then it calms down a little bit. So that dark stroke comes down to here at the bottom, and then I dilute it, move it around. And I'm continually squinting at my reference photo, looking to see where those darkest values are and where those strong contrasts should be placed. When I squint, I can see the highlights on the water, and I can see there's a little line of land kind of along here that is dark on this side where that log kind of touches the water, and then it kind of fades to a very thin line, and then we're going to just soften that. It's going to blur some of these shapes, but this is an exercise. It's not what I would call maybe a serious painting, although it might get there. I try to tell myself all my paintings are just sketches until they've been successfully achieved. And then let's do a little bit, let's do our mountains and our sky, how about? And I'm gonna take some creative license with my sky so I don't feel like a failure if well, no, I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna take some liberties with my sky just to arrange my clouds in a way that's pleasing to me. There's actually a lot of contrast between the clouds and the blue sky and behind. That you don't always get that with sky, because sometimes your clouds will be quite transparent and soft, so then the contrasts won't be as strong. I'm just going to paint in a bit of this mountain peak and see what we can... again, I want it to be dark but not too dark, and detailed but not too detailed. This is a study, it's a sketch, and it's quite a complex one. There's a lot of elements going on here, so one thing I want to try and do is simplify. That might mean looking for those strong mountain ridges and painting those, and then kind of blurring out the rest of the details, which I kind of like the idea of. Using the side of my brush to create texture rather than painting it with many small lines. Recognizing here that I already wet the sky, so I'm probably going to have a hard time getting a crisp mountain edge there, but that's okay because I think it can look like a cloud over top of the mountain. That'll give another mood to the painting. Lighten that so it's not the same value as the trees in the front. And I'm going to put a little hint of a mountain on that side. And then I'm going to go back to the sky again. As I've been painting, this edge might have started to dry on this side. Just try and add some water and see if we can soften it and get our balance of moisture back. Now as I'm painting this, I'm thinking, because the last thing I want to do is kind of a bonus, and I'm getting closer to that point. I think I'm going to want to do a little bit more refining, but mostly I feel done with this sketch so far. This is really helping me to see those value patterns. And so as I start to feel like I might be almost finished, I'm just going back over my darkest darks here in a few areas. I want to think about adding a little splash of color, and this is something I just did the other day with one of my paintings. I was doing this value study, and then at the very end I added the orange in, and it was just so fun to see that very simple sketch turn a little bit more vibrant by that addition of one single additional color. So I'm debating which color I want to do for this painting. Now I've exaggerated some of my darks here, and I've simplified my tree shapes. I could decide I want to pull up some trees so we see a little bit of texture in our foreground trees. And I'm feeling like I should have maybe lightened my values a little bit for that darkest dark, which is why we do value studies. Value studies are information gathering excursions, getting into the painting and exploring what kind of dynamics we have between the elements in the scene. Armed with that knowledge, we can create stronger paintings. Well, I promised you fun, and we haven't really gotten there yet. Remember, though, that value studies really only take a few minutes of your time and provide so much valuable information. So I really recommend that you don't skip them. Take a few minutes, get to know your photo with a value study. In this next part of the video, we're going to add the fun. We're going to do a little additional color to our value study and just make it a little more interesting. I'd love to see what you're making. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you'd like to see in a future video. Send me an email. I want to see your value studies and how they've helped you paint stronger paintings. Please do subscribe to my channel. There's a new painting lesson almost every Friday, and lots more to help you learn and grow your watercolor skills. Let's finish up. So now that I've done that, we're going to put in some color, and you know, I'm tempted to want to use the blue of the water. I'm tempted to want to go with the green of the trees, but I'm going to avoid that too. I'm going to actually go with the land color, I think, and see what that does. We're going to grab, this is Daniel Smith's Goethite. We're going to give it a try. It's one of their Primatech colors. It's a little bit hard to work up on the brush because those mineral colors are a little bit heavy. They're sedimentary colors, so when you want to pick up a thick wash of pigment, you gotta work at them a little bit. And we're gonna just throw that in. A little more water, I think. A little bit down here. Now, I don't want the color actually to be pasty. It's kind of opaque right now and thick. So we're going to just lay those colors, those brush strokes, and then with a little water, we'll give them the chance to move. And because the indigo has these properties where it really does create blooms and watermarks really easily, you can see that starting to happen in this area. So we're going to get some more texture happening here, which was why I chose the Goethite to begin with. Pulling upward, this connects the land to the trees. What you could actually do with something like this is you could do a study in a very pale shade of gray where your value transitions from dark to light are a lot more subtle, and then go over it with color, creating a Grizz Eye effect. And that's a classic underpainting technique that's been used by painters, master painters for centuries, and it would be a great, it's not as often used in watercolor, but it would be another way to start to develop and understand your values. I like the idea of doing a value study and then adding some playful color just to make it engage with the process a little bit more, and it gives the opportunity to learn about using two colors together instead of just one. But anytime you stop, you pause in your painting process to do a value study, well, first of all, it's not really pausing. You're strengthening your painting skills by learning to see in terms of values. And when artists do this, their paintings become more dynamic because of the attention paid to the contrasts. This, and actually I could have done it even better, left a little more light value right in this area to move the eye into the painting right along there. And then making special care to place my mountains so that they're pointing in a way to this area of the path of the water. And they're subtle techniques. Nature does it for us when we take a good photograph, but we, as artists, we have to plan it. And so using a value study can really help you to see and anticipate those value contrasts and that path that your viewer takes through the painting.